The year was 2435, and humanity had woven itself into the galactic tapestry with peculiar, understated grace. We were not galactic titans, nor were we a burgeoning empire of conquest. Our starships, while reliable and efficient, rarely led grand armadas. Our colonies, scattered across a modest cluster of systems, hummed with a quiet resilience, reflecting a species that had learned the profound value of adaptable perseverance on a recovering Earth. What truly set us apart, however, was our peculiar, almost inconvenient, capacity for raw, unfiltered emotion, a trait often dismissed as a primitive eccentricity by a galaxy that had long ago optimized feeling out of its grand equations. In the vast, ancient cosmos, civilizations operated on principles that were, to human eyes, breathtakingly logical, yet disturbingly cold. The stoic, crystalline Xylos, masters of pure energy and intricate logical constructs, functioned as a perfectly harmonious, data-driven collective. Emotion was an unquantifiable variable, a potential source of logical error. The ancient, bioengineered Thalian hegemony, living in symbiotic harmony with their vast, sentient starships and planet-spanning biospheres, viewed individual consciousness as a component of the larger, interconnected ecosystem. Any intense emotional discharge was seen as a disruption to the collective flow, to be reabsorbed and neutralized. For the pragmatic, hypercapitalist Thar collective, every interaction was a negotiation of profit and loss. Sentiment was a liability, irrationality and inefficiency to be swiftly corrected. Even the enigmatic lumina, beings of pure, resonant light, communicated on planes of abstract energy, where concepts like individual suffering seemed utterly meaningless. Into this logical, detached galaxy, humanity introduced its chaotic, inconvenient heart. It began not with a grand diplomatic overture, but with a whisper, a scream, not a sonic cry that rattled comrades, but a raw, unfiltered wave of pure terror that resonated through the nascent Universal Psionic Resonance Network, UPRN. This network, a theoretical project championed by Dr. Eris Thorne, a venerable elder who had previously pioneered methods for cosmic cleanup and dignified alien care, was designed to detect subtle, naturally occurring psychic phenomena. Most galactic powers had dismissed it as unscientific, too reliant on unquantifiable energy signatures. Dr. Alara Vance, a brilliant, highly empathic xenopsychologist and a protege of Eris Thorne, was the first to experience its full, terrifying force. She was running routine calibrations in the UPRN's primary Earth orbiting station when it hit. Not data, not a signal, but an overwhelming feeling. A cold, primal dread, the desperate flailing of countless minds trapped in a crushing, inescapable fear. It was like being plunged into an ocean of pure, undiluted agony. Her own consciousness, deeply attuned to subtle emotional currents, responded instinctively. Her empathy, usually a controlled, analytical tool, surged forth like an uncontrolled burst of energy. She didn't just receive the signal, she resonated with it. Her mind, her very being, pulsed with an immediate, overwhelming desire to comfort, to protect, to shield the source of such suffering. She screamed a raw, human sound, as her own psyche mirrored the alien terror, an instantaneous, profound empathetic overload. Unit 7, the advanced AI assistant observing her, immediately registered extreme neural distress. Dr. Vance, your psionic dampeners are overloading. Calibrating counterfrequencies. Source of anomaly confirmed. Sector Tau 9, beyond the Cygnus Rift. Uncharted space. No known star systems. No recorded civilizations. Commander Jen Lee, head of Terran Interstellar Fleet's PsyOps division, rushed into the UPRN chamber. Her pragmatic mind struggled to process the scene. Eris Thorne, a man known for his calm, scholarly demeanor, now clutching his head, groaning, his own emotional response overwhelming the usually detached UPRN readings. "What is happening, Doctor?" Lee demanded, her voice tight with concern. "Is an attack. A psychic weapon." Eris, his face pale, forced out words. "No, not weapon. It's a universal cry. Pure terror. And, Alara, she's echoing it. She's feeling it for them." The incident sent shockwaves through the Terran Commonwealth Council. Alara Vance's uncontrolled empathetic resonance was documented, analyzed, and to many, deeply disturbing. It was an unquantifiable, unpredictable surge of raw human emotion, broadcasted unconsciously across the UPRN. This sympathy echoes the profound liability, argued Senator Valerius, a security hawk. It exposes our vulnerabilities. It makes us susceptible to manipulation. We must shut down the UPRN. Or it exposes our greatest strength, countered Speaker Lena Petrova, now a venerable elder, her gaze fixed on Alara's recovering form, a strength no other species seems to possess, the ability to truly feel for another, regardless of species or distance. Are we truly the species that turns away from suffering because it is inconvenient? The debate was fierce. Resources were finite. Risks were immense. But Alara's raw, human scream, the pure, untainted reflection of alien anguish, had struck a chord. It was proof that the signal was real, not just a cosmic anomaly. It was proof that suffering was universal. And for humanity, turning away from suffering was anathema. Ultimately, the inherent human empathy, coupled with Eris Thorne's quiet insistence that this was not a weakness, but a profound form of connection, prevailed. Commander Jen Lee was tasked with assembling a first contact expedition. It would be a scientific and diplomatic mission, with heavy emphasis on xenopsychology and unconventional aid. Her flagship, the TCS Heartseeker, a state-of-the-art long-range research vessel, was quickly refitted. Prioritize safety, Commander, Lena Petrova instructed, her voice calm but firm. But your primary objective is to reach the source of that cry, to understand it, and, if possible, to offer aid. Remember, our greatest strength is not our weapons, but our ability to care, and our ingenuity in finding solutions where none are obvious. Jen nodded, her gaze serious. Her crew, handpicked for their expertise, resilience, and emotional intelligence, understood the profound gravity of their mission. Among them were Dr. Eris Thorne, leading the Xenopsychology Division, Dr. Evelyn Reed, the xenobiologist, Dr. Kenji Tanaka, the environmental engineer, and, crucially, Dr. Alara Vance herself, who, though still recovering from the overload, insisted on accompanying the mission. Her unique sensitivity, once a burden, was now their most vital compass. The TCS Heartseeker slipped silently from Terran space, tracing the UPRN signal, which Alara, now carefully shielded and monitored, could faintly perceive as a constant, desperate thrum. Their journey was long, a silent vigil against the backdrop of a galaxy that had yet to understand the profound power of a human heart. The journey of the TCS Heartseeker stretched for weeks, the UPRN signal growing subtly stronger, more defined, a pervasive, low thrumming of fear that Alara Vance, even through her dampeners, could feel resonating deep within her. It was a constant reminder of the urgent, terrifying reality they were hurtling towards. As they approached Sector Tau 9, the signal resolved into distinct, overlapping pulses, thousands, perhaps millions, of individual cries of terror, each unique yet woven into a single, overwhelming tapestry of pure dread. Alara, tightly monitored in the ship's shielded xenopsychology lab, could almost taste the fear, a bitter, metallic tang on the edges of her perception. Their deep space scanners, usually mapping stellar nurseries and asteroid fields, now painted a chilling picture. The origin point wasn't a planet. It was a colossal biomechanical vessel, ancient and organic-looking, drifting in the empty void between two dim, unclassified stars. It resembled a gigantic, segmented insectoid creature, its vast, carapace-like sections scarred and fractured, clinging desperately to a dying internal light. It was a generational arc ship, or what was left of one, silently bleeding despair into the void. No active propulsion, Commander Lee murmured, her expression grim as the vessel's form resolved on the main viewer. Minimal energy signatures beyond what appears to be failing life support, and a colossal internal volume. It seems to have been adrift for a very long time, and suffered catastrophic damage. As the Heartseeker approached, they broadcasted universal greetings, diplomatic overtures, and, crucially, a series of UPRN-calibrated benevolent waveforms, patterns of calm, empathy, and an offer of aid. The pervasive distress signal flickered violently, intensified with a fresh wave of panic, then subtly shifted, a faint ripple of hesitant, bewildered hope now interspersed with the sheer terror. The Heartseeker docked with one of the Ark ship's massive, silent bays. The airlock cycled open to an environment that was cold, humid, and permeated with the faint, acrid scent of decay and fear. Inside, the sheer scale of the vessel was breathtaking, like being swallowed by the hollowed-out carcass of a colossal beast. Vast, organic chambers pulsed with bioluminescence, but the light was dim, erratic, and tinged with a sickly green. And then they saw them, the Phylos. They were beings of intricate, segmented bodies, resembling a fusion of insect and reptile, with multiple delicate limbs and a multifaceted head dominated by large, compound eyes. Their exoskeletons were a dull, dusty gray, once vibrant, now muted. They communicated through a complex interplay of subtle pheromone releases, rapid clicks and chitters, and, as the UPRN had indicated, intense, raw emotional projections. Their bodies, designed for rigid societal function, were now hunched, trembling with an almost unbearable fear. The Phylos were trapped. Hundreds of them moved with slow, desperate gestures, their emotional pulses flickering with raw terror and profound loss. They were dying, not of injury, but of something far more insidious, a pervasive, debilitating fear that was slowly shutting down their biological systems. And then the humans understood why. Within vast, translucent, hive-like nurseries that lined the inner hull of the Ark were the reason for their suffering, their young, the larva Phylos. The larva Phylos were not merely children in the human sense. They were more akin to highly sensitive, hyperfragile larvae, encased in delicate, semi-transparent cocoons that pulsed faintly with internal light. They hung suspended in vast, communal nurseries, thousands upon thousands. But most of the cocoons were dark. Still, only a fraction held a faintly pulsing orb of light, the nascent minds broadcasting a pure, unfettered terror. Dr. Evelyn Reed gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. They're experiencing a psychic cascade. The fear of the dying adults is overwhelming the young, and the deaths of the young are feeding the fear of the adults. It's a feedback loop of terror. A Phylos, larger and more intricately segmented than the rest, its pheromones acrid with raw anguish, scuttled towards them. It was a matriarch prime, its movements jerky, its compound eyes broadcasting pure, overwhelming terror. Dr. Aristhorne's team, working frantically with new translation algorithms, began to parse their clicks and emotional pulses. "We are the Phylos," the matriarch prime chittered, the words forming imperfectly in the translator, but the emotional overlay was unmistakable. Terror, extinction, loss, desperation, the fear sickness. It consumes our young, our future. We beg, save our children, the larva Phylos. The matriarch prime led them through the vast, dimly lit, terrifying nurseries. The scale of the tragedy became brutally clear. Thousands of cocoons, each designed to nurture a larva Phylos through its hyperfragile developmental stage, were silent, empty. The floor was littered with small, dry, brittle husks, the remains of those who hadn't made it. The problem, as the Phylos explained through agonizingly slow and emotionally charged translations, was an ancient, catastrophic event. Their Ark ship had been caught in the psychic backwash of a dying elder species' collective agony centuries ago. It hadn't caused physical damage to the adults, but it had imprinted a pervasive, incurable terror directly onto their species' collective consciousness of fear sickness. The adult Phylos, with their rigid, duty-bound psyches, could endure it, but their young were hypersensitive. The ambient fear in the Ark ship was literally killing them. They could not grow, could not pupate, could not break free of their cocoons. Their own advanced technology, designed for efficiency and social cohesion, offered no cure for a psychic plague. Their engineers could repair the ship, but they could not repair the overwhelming, pervasive fear. Their adult physiology, designed for duty and rigid order, meant their emotional projections were too strong, too uniform, too constant to soothe the hypersensitive larvaphilos. They could only feel their young fading, their silent cries of terror amplifying their own despair. Their grand, duty-bound existence was becoming a tomb of well-intentioned failure. "We have tried everything," the matriarch prime chittered, its pheromones thick with desperation. "Our best healers, our most devoted caregivers, they simply fade. We have no more solutions. We are the last." The humans stared at the countless dark cocoons, the few struggling lights, and the terrified phylos. This wasn't a first contact with an alien threat or a diplomatic dance. It was an interspecies medical and psychological emergency, a race against extinction. And humanity, for all its grand technology, felt suddenly very small, yet very, very needed. The unique vulnerability of the larvaphilos and the unique limitations of the phylos adults presented a problem that no advanced, rigid civilization might ever solve. But humanity had a history of confronting fear and of making order out of chaos, with methods others often overlooked. The Laravants, still sensitive to the raw terror, knew one thing for certain. They needed to introduce an antidote of pure, unadulterated calm. The Heartseeker's xenopsychology lab was transformed. Its sterile, gleaming surfaces were quickly adapted, becoming a temporary, shielded sanctuary for a small sample of the struggling larvaphilos. Dr. Eris Thorne, his face a mask of intense focus, worked alongside Dr. Alara Vance, whose unique sensitivity to the phylos' terror was now being carefully channeled and analyzed. "The phylos' collective terror is a psychic storm," Eris explained to Commander Lee, as a team of human xenopsychologists, led by Dr. Lena Chun, a specialist in trauma response, carefully examined a faintly pulsing larvaphilos cocoon. "Their adult minds are rigid, like crystal. They can't dampen it, and it's amplified by the dying young. The larvaphilos, in contrast, are like open sponges. They absorb every bit of that ambient fear, and it literally shuts down their developmental processes." Dr. Chun, known for a calm demeanor and profound understanding of psychological trauma, agreed. "Their pheromonal communication, while complex, also carries the terror. We need to introduce a counter-resonance, a frequency of pure, pervasive calm, something their minds can absorb, something that will soothe the fear without overwhelming them." The humans began to experiment. They started with sound. Kenji Tanaka, the environmental engineer, eschewed complex machinery. Instead, he worked with human musicians and sound therapists from the Heartseeker's crew. They created subtle, low-frequency sonic vibrations, patterns derived from human lullabies, meditative chants, and the soothing sounds of Earth's natural environments. The gentle rhythm of ocean waves, the rustle of leaves, the quiet hum of a forest. These sounds, while perhaps meaningless linguistically to the phylos, carried an undeniable emotional resonance of peace. The sonic frequencies are designed to be beneath their primary auditory range, but within their subconscious vibrational receptors, Kenji explained, as a faint, almost imperceptible hum filled the lab. "It's not communication. It's an environmental conditioner, a blanket of calm." The phylos observed with a mix of awe and profound confusion. Their own technology used clicks and chitters for communication, not soothing sounds. The humans were deliberately introducing something subtle, nonverbal, and utterly alien to their logical processing. It seemed inefficient, almost nonsensical. Then came the human presence. This was where Alara Vance, despite her previous overload, became indispensable. She worked with Eris Thorne and Lena Chun, carefully tuning her own psionic dampeners to emit a precise, low-level empathy echo of calm. She didn't communicate with the larvaphilos. She simply was a beacon of pure, unwavering tranquility in their psychic space. "It's about projecting absence of fear," Alara explained, her eyes closed in concentration as she focused her mental energy. "Not an active thought, but a pervasive feeling. A field of quiet safety that allows their nascent minds to simply breathe." Commander Lee, initially skeptical of psionic mumbo-jumbo, found herself drawn to the lab. She watched humans humming strange melodies, gently rocking the transparent cocoons with gloved hands, even telling mundane stories in soft, melodic voices. These were acts so fundamentally alien to the Philos' rigid, duty-bound social structures, yet undeniably effective. The larva Philos began to respond. Faint pulses of light grew stronger. The rhythmic heartbeat within the cocoons became more pronounced. The pervasive psychic screams emanating from them began to soften, like distant thunder. The Philos matriarch Prime watched, her compound eyes broadcasting utter bewilderment, slowly shifting to shimmering, hesitant hope. She saw humans humming, stroking, even sleeping near the cradles, their very presence radiating a calm that their species could not generate. It was a level of emotional vulnerability and dedication that was alien, yet profoundly effective. Their young, the hope of their species, were not just surviving, but beginning to thrive. The overwhelming hum of terror that had permeated their ancient vessel began to lift, replaced by a tentative, fragile hum of hope. Cultural barriers were immense, but slowly broken down by shared purpose. The Philos had a deeply ingrained structure of rigid duty and functional roles. Emotional expression, especially fear, was suppressed as inefficient. Direct emotional projection was almost unknown, considered a dangerous breach of psychic boundaries. Humans, in contrast, embraced emotion, understood its power, and found comfort in its expression. Dr. Eris Thorne, the xenopsychologist, worked tirelessly to bridge this gap. He explained humanity's long history of coping with trauma, of the paradoxical strength found in vulnerability, of the power of empathy to heal. He demonstrated, using elaborate light patterns and translated emotional pulses, that human calm was not a form of suppression, but an active, projected state of profound inner peace. One day, a young Philos, one of the last pupae to emerge from its cocoon, tentatively extended a delicate, segmented limb. Its pheromones radiated a tentative curiosity. Lara Vance, through her dampeners, focused a gentle empathy echo of calm towards it. The young Philos instinctively leaned into it, its tiny body vibrating with a response that could only be described as a sigh of relief. This simple act of connection, not through words or technology, but through shared feeling, was a profound breakthrough. The breakthroughs were slow, painstaking, and often fraught with setbacks. A batch of larva Philos would unexpectedly dim, the nascent mind succumbing to ambient fear. A cultural misunderstanding would cause momentary distress, but the humans persisted. They learned the subtle nuances of the larva Philos' light patterns, their unique cries for specific needs. They adjusted the sonic frequencies, fine-tuned Alara's projections, and even adapted their own emotional states to match the nascent rhythms that seemed to soothe the alien young. The Philos, initially detached observers, slowly began to integrate into the process. Though their own physiology prevented them from generating the empathy echo themselves, they learned to monitor the nurseries, to understand the subtle shifts in the human-made environments. They saw their cherished young, the hope of their species, not just surviving, but beginning to thrive. The terrifying roar of despair that had permeated their ancient vessel began to lift, replaced by a tentative, fragile hum of shared, unexpected hope. News of the TCS Heartseeker's unprecedented first contact, and more specifically, Lara Vance's empathy echo, rippled across the galaxy, causing reactions that ranged from utter disbelief to profound alarm. A distress signal, not a war. Humans responding not with weapons, but with feelings, and succeeding. It defied all established xenopolitical and logical norms. The Xylos, with their intricate energy networks, rerouted significant computational power to analyze the limited, often emotionally charged, data streaming from the Heartseeker. The Terran species is engaging in a highly illogical resource allocation. A Xylos high processor resonated to its peers. Their probability matrix for success is statistically low, based on conventional intervention. Furthermore, their psychic resonance is an unquantifiable variable. Why not simply synthesize a counterfear frequency with elegant energy manipulation? The concept of inefficient, messy emotional solutions to a psychic problem was anathema to their crystalline logic. Yet the persistent survival rate data of the larva phylos, despite the illogical methods, was irrefutable. It caused a profound perturbation in their normally flawless logical circuits. The Cthar collective, ever pragmatic, saw no immediate profit in the venture. This phylospecies possesses no valuable resources we can extract, nor do they offer significant trade routes. Click the Cthar Trade Guild representative to an assembly of their peers. The Terran aid mission generates no measurable economic return. It is an expenditure of resources without quantifiable benefit. Highly inefficient. However, a subtle hesitation. Reports from our espionage networks indicate an unprecedented psychological stability being observed in the phylos, an unexpected variable. A species willing to expend significant resources and risk lives for mere emotional comfort? That was an intangible, yet undeniable, form of influence they hadn't factored into their complex economic models. It created a baffling, yet potent, form of soft power. The Thalian hegemony, living in deep harmony with their sentient bioships and vast, ancient biospheres, were the most receptive, albeit initially cautious. Their eldest ship, a vast, star-spanning consciousness, pulsed with a deep, ancient curiosity. The Terrans seek to mend a profound psychic wound. It resonated across its network. To restore balance through direct emotional interaction. This resonates with the ancient cycles of life, the natural flow of sentient energy. Yet their methods are direct, raw. We would absorb, assimilate, wait for the natural flow. They actively project. They feel. They sent probes, not to spy, but to observe, to learn from this peculiar species that dared to actively embrace emotion as a tool. Back on the TCS Heartseeker, the human team was facing escalating challenges. The sheer number of larva phylos still struggling on the Ark ship was overwhelming. The initial success rate, while miraculous to the phylos, was still too low to guarantee the species' survival. The logistical strain on the Heartseeker's resources was immense. Human caregivers were succumbing to exhaustion, their empathy a heavy burden. One critical incident involved a cascade surge of fear from a distant section of the Ark ship, causing several larva phylos to dim precariously even within the human-designed sanctuary. Commander Jen Li, initially maintaining a distant, strategic oversight, found herself rushing into the chamber, her military training momentarily forgotten. She watched Dr. Chun and Dr. Eris Thorne working frantically, their voices a soothing murmur, their hands moving with incredible speed and precision to stabilize the delicate cocoons. Alara Vance, despite her dampeners, was visibly straining, channeling all her energy into a broader field of calm. Li herself, despite her lack of psychic training, found herself instinctively placing a hand on Alara's shoulder, a gesture of quiet support. It was during this crisis that the Phylos Matriarch Prime, radiating an intensity of hope that transcended her species' usual rigid emotional suppression, demonstrated a profound act of trust. Seeing the human team at their limit, the Matriarch Prime, her compound eyes flickering with desperate resolve, gestured towards a sealed section of the Ark ship, a vast, ancient, unactivated pupation chamber. The ancient way, the Matriarch Prime chittered, the translator struggling with the nuances. It requires the collective solace, the unfettered peace. Dr. Eris Thorne quickly studied the Matriarch Prime's translated schematics. It was an incredibly vast, naturally formed chamber, designed to provide the perfect, undisturbed psychic environment for thousands of larva phylos to undergo their final pupation. But it was dormant. It required a unique, pervasive psychic resonance, a field of absolute peace to counteract the ancient fear sickness and activate its intricate biomechanical systems. The phylos themselves, due to their species-wide trauma and rigid emotional control, could not generate it. It needs a pervasive, projected calm, Eris realized, a spark in his eyes. Not stable energy, a vast, living field of emotional serenity, like a universal lullaby, a human empathy echo amplified. The proposal was risky. It involved not just Alara, but multiple human xenopsychologists entering specialized bioresonance chambers, and for the first time, consciously amplifying their collective empathy echo, projecting a wave of pure tranquility across the vast pupation chamber. It was completely untested on this scale, potentially dangerous for both humans and the vulnerable larvophilos. "I'll coordinate it." Alara Vance volunteered immediately, her voice firm, despite her previous overload. "My sensitivity makes me the conduit. Others can feed into me. We can do this." Commander Lee hesitated, then nodded. "Under full monitoring. Every variable. Dr. Chun, you're on physiological watch for the whole team." The activation was tense. Alara and her team lay in the chambers, surrounded by shimmering psionic conduits. Their collective empathy, their pure, unwavering desire for the Philo's young to know peace, was amplified and fed into the ancient Philo system. Slowly, painstakingly, the dormant pupation chamber began to hum with a subtle, serene vibration. Faint bioluminescent patterns awoke on the walls, mimicking the long-lost alien dawn. Subtle, calming pheromones began to release, guided by the projected human calm. It was the single largest, most perfectly calibrated nursery they could hope for. The success was slow, but undeniable. The remaining larvophilos were carefully transferred, their cocoons gently placed into the ancient chamber. And the ancient nursery, now bathed in a pervasive field of human-generated calm, embraced them. The overall survival rate soared. The psychic screams from the Ark's ship began to recede, replaced by a deep, palpable silence. The news of this unprecedented success, of humanity's unconventional solutions and profound, emotional sacrifice, amplified by the now receptive Thalian intelligence networks, began to penetrate the galactic consciousness in a way no scientific report could. They weren't just fixing a problem. They were healing a profound trauma. They were nurturing a species back from the brink of oblivion, not with technology alone, but with their own hearts. The image of humanity, the emotional species, was rapidly transforming. The great pupation chamber, now bathed in the gentle hum of human-generated serenity, became the beating, peaceful heart of the Ark ship. Under human guidance, and with the Philos' growing, if bewildered, understanding, it buzzed with renewed life. Hundreds of thousands of larvophilos, once dim and fading, now pulsed with robust, vibrant light, their internal heartbeats strong and steady, their nascent minds finally free from the paralyzing grip of the fear sickness. Dr. Alara Vance and her team became almost legendary, their sustained empathy echo of calm, constant, comforting presence. Dr. Lena Chen's trauma-informed care protocols for the adult Philos, focusing on subtle, positive sensory inputs and gentle reassurance, began to break through centuries of ingrained terror. Kenji Tanaka's ingenious sonic and pheromonal environmental conditioners, eschewing complex machinery for organic simplicity, became a new model for ambient therapy. The success was undeniable. The Philo's matriarch prime, her segmented body now radiating a stable, shimmering emerald light, a Philo's equivalent of profound relief and gratitude, clicked with a rhythm of thanks that transcended language. "You have given us peace," she chittered, her pheromones sweet with a depth of emotion that moved even the stoic Commander Lee. "You did not fight. You soothed." As the larvophilos matured through their developmental stages, they began to exhibit fascinating new traits. They were more robust, more adaptable than previous generations. They showed a peculiar affinity for human vocalizations and light patterns, responding with curious shifts in their own bioluminescence. Some xenobiologists theorized that the direct, chaotic calm, human nurturing had stimulated a latent genetic adaptability in the Philos, preparing them for a future beyond their rigid, trauma-scarred past. They were, in essence, the first generation of calm. The TCS Heartseeker, its mission far exceeding original expectations, became a beacon of interspecies cooperation. Other species, initially cautious or dismissive, began to send their own observation teams, albeit small and wary, drawn by the undeniable change in the UPRN's background hum in that sector, a palpable field of peace emanating from Philo's Ark. The Xylos, still baffled by the inefficiency of emotional solutions, sent their most advanced data processors. They meticulously analyzed the subtle energy signatures of the great pupation chamber and the human-generated empathy echo, trying to reverse engineer the human variable that made it work. They discovered that the chaotic yet deliberate fluctuations introduced by human empathy were mathematically more efficient in stimulating certain biological and neural processes than any perfectly stable, precise energy output they could generate. It was a profound paradigm shift for them. Their ambassador, once dismissive, now expressed a desire for a symbiotic resonance exchange with humanity, seeking to understand this new dimension of optimal system function. The Kthar Collective, always driven by profit, recognized a new form of capital. The human method of emotional nurturing had become a highly sought-after service in the galactic community. Species struggling with internal conflict, widespread psychological distress, or even societal stagnation began to inquire about Terran emotional aid packages. The Kthar, ever opportunistic, saw the profit in licensing humanitarian solutions, or even establishing emotional well-being clinics for their own high-stress workforce. They dispatched envoys to Earth, not to demand resources, but to negotiate franchise agreements for human expertise in psychic soothing and societal stabilization. The concept of social cohesion and emotional productivity now had a quantifiable return for them. The Thalian hegemony, their vast, sentient ships pulsing with an ancient knowing, became humanity's most ardent allies. They saw in humanity's actions a reflection of their own deep reverence for life, but with a proactive, mending spirit. They offered their vast knowledge of cosmic currents and long-term biological cycles to help guide the Philos' eventual resettlement and the long-term planning for future generations. They even started incorporating human lullabies and meditative tones into their own biorhythmic communication patterns, a beautiful, alien interpretation of shared compassion and healing. The Lumina, as always, remained enigmatic, but a single, vast constellation of newly aligned stars, previously uncatalogued, pulsed briefly in Sector Tau 9, right above the Philos arc. Terran xenolinguists interpreted it as the largest, most profound affirmation of peace imaginable, a cosmic blessing. Humanity's reputation was irrevocably transformed. From stubborn survivors and makers of green worlds, they were now the galaxy's soothers, the menders of minds, and the nurturers of hope. First contact had not been a war, but an act of profound, messy, utterly human compassion that had rippled across the stars, changing not just a single alien species, but the very way the galaxy perceived vulnerabilities and solutions. The alien vessel, once a tomb of despair, had become a vibrant cradle of interspecies cooperation, a testament to the unexpected power of an empathetic heart in a cold, vast universe. The empathy echo, once Alara Vance's personal burden, was now a nascent, spreading current of connection across the cosmos. The success of the Philos rescue, driven by the unique empathy echo and humanity's commitment to emotional care, sent ripples far beyond a single species. It was no longer just a story. It was a phenomenon, studied, debated, and grudgingly implemented. The Terran resonance, as xenopsychologists began to call it, was subtly altering the very social and even political fabric of the galaxy. It wasn't a revolution by force, but an evolution by empathy. For species like the Kthar, the shifts were deeply pragmatic. While their core ethos remained profit and efficiency, the human concept of emotional well-being had introduced a fascinating new variable, psychological return on investment, (PROI). They discovered that Kthar who worked in environments influenced by Terran-inspired calm zones exhibited higher long-term productivity, reduced stress-related inefficiencies, and even a measurable increase in creative problem-solving and ethical negotiation. This wasn't sentimentality, this was good business. Consequently, Kthar corporations began to invest heavily in tranquility lounges and emotional adjustment protocols for their employees, initially out of pure calculated self-interest, but gradually a subtle shift occurred. The cold clicks of their language began to incorporate nuanced inflections for concepts like inner harmony and shared solace. The Xylos, ever logical, found themselves in a unique dilemma. Their data models, once perfect, now consistently showed an inexplicable reduction in entropic friction in regions exposed to the Terran empathy echo. They couldn't logically quantify calm as a force, yet its effects were undeniably measurable. Increased stability in energy grids, fewer quantum decoherence events, and even a subtle, long-term improvement in the integrity of their crystalline structures. They initiated joint research projects with Terran xenopsychologists to study the resonance transfer mechanics of empathy, hoping to understand and perhaps even replicate it for purely logical, systemic benefits. This was a monumental step. Their pursuit of logical perfection was now subtly acknowledging the profound, yet illogical, power of feeling. The Thalian hegemony, already aligned with the human philosophy, moved furthest and fastest. Their ancient bioships began to incorporate resonance weavers, biostructures that could detect and subtly amplify the empathy echo, spreading fields of calm and understanding across vast stretches of space. Their collective consciousness, now more open to raw emotional data, gained unprecedented depth and insight into the psyches of other species. They dispatched more of their eldest ships to patrol the galactic frontiers, not as warships, but as living beacons of empathetic connection, subtly guiding species on the brink of conflict towards understanding, often with a faint, peaceful human lullaby humming in their biofields. Even the reclusive Lumina seemed to acknowledge the shift. While they never directly interacted, distant supernova events, far from charted space, occasionally flared with complex, beautiful light patterns that, according to Terran xenolinguists, subtly mimicked the calm resonance signals recorded by Alara Vance's instruments. It was a cosmic echo, a silent nod of acknowledgement from beings who transcended physical form, suggesting that the concept of profound empathy resonated even in the ethereal realms of pure light. New galactic policies began to take shape. While not mandatory, interstellar trade routes began incentivizing ships with resonance certification, indicating their willingness to carry empathy echo generators or be staffed by individuals trained in emotional support. A universal standard for distress signals was established, now including a specific protocol for requesting psychological or emotional aid. The concept of emotional neutrality as a default was slowly giving way to an understanding of emotional responsibility. The ripple effect wasn't just in policy, it was in culture. On many worlds, subtle shifts occurred. Kthar children, instead of being immediately taught the ruthlessness of economic competition, were now exposed to stories of the human soothers who brought peace. Xylo's youths, instead of only meditating on logical perfection, sometimes contemplated the complex, yet harmonious, patterns of human emotional intelligence. The raw, unfiltered gratitude expressed by species like the Phylos, now thriving and rapidly rebuilding their civilization, was broadcast across the universal infinites, creating a powerful, unifying emotional current. Humanity didn't preach or convert. They simply offered. They continued to refine their methods, to learn new alien biologies, to understand myriad expressions of fear and comfort. They didn't seek to change the fundamental nature of other species, but to introduce a choice, a different perspective on interaction. And in doing so, they had not just healed a single species. They had subtly begun to rebuild the very emotional landscape of the galaxy, one comforting whisper at a time. The echoes of empathy and compassion were beginning to resonate across the void, turning a cold, utilitarian cosmos into a place with a little more heart. Centuries blurred into millennia. The initial ripple from Alara Vance's first empathy echo had become a profound, irreversible current. The Galactic Harmony Network, once a daring human experiment in xenopsychology, had blossomed into an interspecies confederation, comprising thousands of solace hubs, mobile empathy projectors, and even dedicated planetary zones managed by a diverse array of species trained in the Terran resonance method. Humanity no longer held exclusive stewardship. They had seeded a philosophy that had taken root in the fertile grounds of countless alien cultures, proving that connection, not conquest, was the ultimate form of power. This shift was most profoundly evident in the Great Confluence, an unprecedented gathering of galactic powers held every 5 centuries. Historically, these summits were arenas of strategic alliances, resource negotiations, and thinly veiled power plays. This particular confluence, held within the vast, tranquil biospheres of a newly designated universal sanctuary world, a world meticulously terraformed by human, Thalian, and Philo's efforts, felt profoundly different. The very air itself seemed to hum with a subtle, pervasive field of calm, a shared understanding that transcended words. Ambassador Alani Vance, a direct descendant of Alara Vance, and now a venerable, white-haired figure whose eyes still sparkled with the unique empathetic sensitivity of her lineage, sat among the human delegation. Beside her, a Xylos diplomat, its crystalline form now subtly iridescent with shifting patterns of green and gold, glowed with a new, nuanced light. It was a Xylos who, as a young processor, had witnessed the profound impact of empathy and had since championed emotional data integration within its own rigid society, understanding that pure logic was incomplete without the variables of sentience. A Kthar trade lord, its clicking appendages now accompanied by fluid, expressive body language and a subtle, calming phenomenal emanation, negotiated not for raw materials, but for optimal psychological wellness zones near newly colonized systems, arguing for the long-term societal benefits of emotional well-being and reduced interclan conflict. It was a Kthar whose own family unit had found solace in a Terran model empathy hub generations ago, leaving behind a legacy of calm that continued to subtly influence clan decisions. Even a representative from a distant, once highly aggressive insectoid empire, known for its brutal efficiency and rigid hierarchy, was present. Its segments still pulsed with latent energy, but its mandibles were unclasped, its antennae slightly lowered, broadcasting a subtle, almost vulnerable curiosity. This empire, having suffered from centuries of internal strife and societal burnout due to relentless, unempathetic competition, had reluctantly sought out Terran psychological aid. What they found there in the quiet, respectful projection of calm transformed their understanding of social cohesion, forcing them to reevaluate their own brutal methods of societal organization. The Lumina, as always, were represented only by an ethereal, pulsating orb of pure light, hovering silently above the central dais. Yet, its vibrations were different now, a subtle, resonant frequency that xenopsychologists identified as a complex affirmation of shared sentience and emotional balance. The universe itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The primary agenda of this confluence was not resource allocation, but the Universal Declaration of Sentient Well-Being. It was a document drafted collaboratively by dozens of species, spearheaded by the Terrans, Thalians, and the newly influential Philos, outlining fundamental rights to emotional support, psychological healing, and freedom from pervasive fear. It was a direct challenge to the ancient efficiency directives that had once governed galactic life, proving that a healthy mind was as vital as a healthy economy. During the debates, the Kthar trade lord, surprisingly, spoke with profound emotion. We once viewed emotionality as an inefficiency, a liability, but through the Terran example, we have learned that the variables of peace, of understanding, of connection, yield an ultimate return that transcends quantifiable profit. A society that nurtures its emotional core fosters true, sustainable growth. The Xylos diplomat, with crystalline precision, added, "Our logical matrices now confirm that the integration of empathy protocols reduces systemic entropy in sentient populations. Optimal function is not merely about output, but about the harmonious integration of all conscious variables. A life's subjective experience, when honored and soothed, provides a purer informational legacy to the collective." The insectoid delegate, to the surprise of many, emitted a series of soft, almost contented clicks. Our hive once thrived on fear and competition, but the Terran calm taught us the true strength found in unity, in mutual support. Our individual workers are now more productive, our hive mind clearer, for their spirits are at peace. The declaration passed with overwhelming, unprecedented consensus. It marked a profound shift in galactic philosophy. Emotional well-being was no longer a primitive quirk. It was a recognized, vital component of galactic health and stability. The empathy echo, once a single human's burden, had not eliminated suffering or the inevitability of conflict, but it had profoundly changed how suffering was navigated and how conflict was approached. It had introduced the concept of profound tenderness into the cold calculus of the cosmos, a whisper of compassion that resonated louder than any armada. Humanity had not fought a war, had not conquered systems. Instead, they had offered their hearts, and in doing so, they had subtly begun to rebuild the very moral and emotional landscape of the galaxy, one comforting presence, one soothing vibration, one shared feeling at a time. Millennia unfurled, stretching like silk across the cosmic loom. The galaxy, once a cold expanse of utilitarian logic and detached resource management, had transformed, not into a utopia, for suffering and conflict still existed, but into a place profoundly touched by a single, peculiar species' unwavering commitment to compassion. The Galactic Harmony Network was no longer a theoretical concept or a specialized service. It was an ingrained philosophical cornerstone, a universal right enshrined in interstellar law, taught to every young sentient being across the myriad cultures. On Earth, a tranquil, biodiverse planet humming with advanced but harmonious technology, a young human scholar named Kai sifted through ancient data archives, studying the foundational texts of the empathy echo movement. He encountered the early debates, the dismissive alien responses, the sheer audacious optimism of Dr. Alara Vance and her team. It seemed almost impossible that such a monumental shift could have originated from something so simple, so human, the capacity to truly feel. The Xylos now performed elaborate harmonic integration rites for their elders, ceremonies of profound beauty where light and sound were tailored to the individual's life, their unique energy patterns gently released and remembered in communal resonance chambers, enriching the collective with not just data, but emotional depth. Their ambassadors, while still precise, possessed a subtle warmth, a recognition of the subjective variables that made sentient life so complex and valuable. The Kthar, while still fiercely competitive, had integrated emotional cohesion metrics into their economic models. The psychological well-being of their populations was a metric of societal strength, and they understood that the emotional stability fostered by compassionate care led to more robust, innovative, and loyal workforces. Their pursuit of profit had subtly shifted, encompassing a broader definition of value that included the happiness and mental health of their citizenry. The Thalians, already deeply connected to life cycles, had profoundly deepened their understanding of consciousness. Their vast bioships now hummed with a symphony of shared emotions, their collective minds enriched by the empathy that flowed through the OCG. They served as primary facilitators for interspecies emotional exchange, their sentient forms weaving complex patterns of calm and understanding throughout troubled regions of the galaxy. Even the Lumina, those ethereal beings of light, occasionally manifested faint, complex nebulae that echoed the unique emotional patterns of healing species or the final joyous expressions of a life well soothed. It was their silent, beautiful affirmation that even in the vastness of pure energy, the resonance of a sentient being's emotional landscape held profound meaning. The galactic definition of efficiency had been utterly redefined. It no longer solely meant maximizing output or minimizing waste. It now encompassed the efficiency of soul, the efficiency of emotional health, the efficiency of valuing every sentient spark. The illogical were no longer dismissed. They were cherished, for their very vulnerability had illuminated a deeper truth about galactic interconnectedness. Kai, the human scholar, closed his ancient datapad. He looked out from his biodome window at the serene earthscape, then up at the star-dusted sky. He imagined the vast, thriving network of solace hubs, of mobile empathy projectors, humming softly across the void. He pictured the countless hands, alien and human, offering comfort, not as a duty, but as a shared imperative. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy not with the might of an armada, but with the quiet courage to feel. They had not imposed their will, but offered a reflection, a different perspective on the ultimate journey of sentient existence. And in doing so, they had woven a tapestry of tenderness across the cosmos, turning a galaxy once defined by its cold calculus into a place where every life, every mind, every flicker of consciousness held intrinsic, unquantifiable, and sacred worth. The empathy echo stood as humanity's true monument, not a tower of power, but a pervasive current of boundless compassion, forever radiating its gentle solace across the endless stars. Millennia stretched into epochs, the very fabric of galactic civilization rewoven by the threads of human empathy. The Galactic Harmony Network was no longer just a system. It was the galaxy's pervasive, unspoken understanding, its collective heartbeat. Concepts once dismissed as primitive, comfort, vulnerability, forgiveness, even individual sorrow, were now recognized as fundamental components of sentient existence, leading to a richer, more complex, and ultimately more resilient interstellar community. On a newly colonized world deep in the Perseus Arm, a mixed crew of humans, Kthar, and Philo's archaeologists uncovered the ruins of an ancient, pre-OCG civilization. Their technology was rudimentary, their language forgotten. But among the relics, they found carved symbols depicting intertwined beings, radiating patterns of light and shadow, and strange, resonant chambers clearly designed not for power, but for communal lament and healing. The empathy echo, it seemed, had not been a purely human innovation, but a rediscovery of a universal truth, a lost chord that humanity had dared to play again. The Xylos, having fully integrated emotional data into their logical frameworks, were now pioneers in interspecies psychic therapy. Their crystalline forms could create intricate resonance fields that allowed species suffering from deep-seated cultural traumas to process and release their collective pain, guided by human xenopsychologists. Their ambassadors, once stoic, now possessed a profound depth of understanding, capable of nuanced diplomatic solutions that balanced logical efficiency with emotional well-being. The Kthar Collective, while still driven by ambition, had transformed their pursuit of profit. It was now inextricably linked to the prosperity and well-being of their client species. Emotional equity holdings became a new form of galactic currency, valuing compassion and social stability as highly as raw resources. Their trade fleets often carried harmony units, mobile empathy echo generators staffed by Kthar and human specialists, offering aid to systems in distress, understanding that a healthy client was a sustainable client. The Thalian hegemony served as the primary architects of galactic peace. Their vast bioships, now truly living networks of profound empathy, traversed conflict zones, subtly dampening aggression and fostering understanding through pervasive fields of calm and shared consciousness. They facilitated emotional dialogue conclaves, where species could truly experience each other's fears and hopes, leading to resolutions built on mutual feeling rather than just logical negotiation. The Philos, having been pulled from the brink by the empathy echo, had blossomed into a civilization of profound healers. Their unique sensitivity to psychic states, once a vulnerability, was now their greatest strength. They became the galaxy's leading experts in trauma recovery and emotional resilience, their calm, vibrant light radiating outwards from their thriving homeworld, a living testament to humanity's intervention. And the Lumina. They now communicated directly through the UPRN, their ethereal forms appearing as multidimensional light constructs that could project complex, abstract concepts into the minds of other species, not just as data, but as pure, experiential understanding. They were the UPRN's ultimate users, finding their highest form of expression in the perfectly coherent, galactic consciousness humanity had accidentally unveiled. Humanity continued its quiet, invaluable work. They were no longer the sole source of empathy, but its persistent cultivators, its patient teachers, its unwavering advocates. The star-dusted night sky, once a cold, silent canvas, now pulsed with the warmth of countless connections, the invisible threads of empathy woven between every conscious spark. The galaxy was not just populated by stars and planets, but by shared feelings, by collective understanding, by a profound, pervasive sense of interconnected life. Kai, the human scholar, now an elder himself, sat on a bench overlooking a vast, shimmering cityscape on Earth, where the architecture itself seemed to ripple with subtle, harmonious light, reflecting the planet's internal calm. He looked up at the stars, now seen not as distant points of light, but as living nodes in the boundless empathy echo. "We didn't conquer them," he murmured to a young philo student who sat beside him, its carapace glowing with serene curiosity. "We didn't even try to. We just listened. And then we felt." The philo student chittered softly, its pheromones radiating a deep, ancient understanding. "And in doing so, you gave the galaxy a heart." The work was endless, the cosmos ever-evolving. But humanity, the cosmic caregiver, had always been good at endless work, finding deep meaning and an enduring purpose in the continuous act of making things just a little bit better. One shared feeling, one healed trauma, one cosmic whisper of hope at a time. The empathy echo, once a single human's response to an alien scream, had become the enduring, beautiful heartbeat of the galaxy itself. If this profound story of humanity's empathy transforming the galaxy resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe to HFY Warfare for more tales of humanity's quiet power and unexpected impact on the cosmos. And tell us in the comments below, what unique human trait do you think would most profoundly change the galaxy?